The Frame, a podcast where we talk about movies. I'm Eric.
And I'm Ryley.
And today we're talking about Dune 2021 and Dune 1984. So I wanted to start this podcast by posing a question to you, Ryley, because these are both adaptations of a book. And the question is, in your mind, what makes a good adaptation? Are there things that you see in an adaptation? And I don't know, you're not a huge reader, which I totally get. you don't read for pleasure. so hey, no. I'm accepting that you have to read for a living. So reading for pleasure is very, very different. But my point is, are there things that you look for in an adaptation that make it better than others, or do you even care?
I just like the opening where it's like, I know you're illiterate and I know you don't really know books that well.
No, I did not say illiterate. I just said you don't read much.
which is absolutely true. So like, even for this Dune movie, I've never read Dune. God, I don't think I've read a book recreationally, or at least finished a book recreationally since like junior high. So you are correct in framing that. But if I was to say the one thing that sets apart good book adaptations from bad ones is, I think a good book adaptation casts your protagonist as an older person than what they should be in the book. So I'm thinking like Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, or even with this Dune movie, Kyle MacLachlan as Paul Atreides. I think when you really have someone who is playing a role that they shouldn't be because they're a grown adult rather than like a teenager or child, that makes the movie for me.
Oh, interesting. My partner did not like the fact that Kyle MacLachlan was playing Paul. Like it threw her off.
Yeah, no, it's weird.
But hey, that was his debut role.
That was his debut?
Yeah. And then he went on to do Blue Velvet with David Lynch and then Twin Peaks.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, it was his debut. So respect.
Yeah, good for him. But I guess to answer your question more seriously, I'm of two minds with this. I think what makes a good book adaptation is when the film respects the source content and does not try to deviate it from it too much. Because I think the moment you start deviating from the actual story that it's based on, you almost start alienating the audience who's actually going to see it. So like, you could look at the reaction to the Percy Jackson films and how that kind of bombed, especially because they casted a much older cast of characters as well. Or even looking at like recent TV shows, you have your own gripes with it's not A Wrinkle in Time. What's the Amazon show?
Oh, Wheel of Time. It's like with that, because that show also deviates from the books a little bit in terms of how the plot progresses, and that's something that you don't necessarily like. For me, having never read the books, I liked the show personally, but the moment you really start tweaking things, especially for important plot elements, I think that's when you start getting into rough territory. And obviously, for some movies, you need to take some creative freedoms. So like different medium, right?
Well, I don't know how accurate the original Dune is compared to the book, but I know the Dune book because I was just in Indigo last night and I looked at the book. It's 800 pages long. It's not a short text.
No, it's dense.
Well, to fit all those pages into a 2 hour and 20-minute movie, you're gonna have to cut some things. So. Does that make it a bad film adaptation? I don't know. I'll leave that to people who actually know the book to decide that. But that's kind of where I sit. Outside of that, I think as long as you're following the story content to a decent degree, whether or not it's a good movie depends on traditional filmmaking. Does it have good acting? Is it good directing? Cinematography nice? The score? If you have all that, well, it's going to be a good movie.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think respect for the plot is really important. And to me, what makes a really good adaptation is having a creator that understands the most important parts of a plot, right? David Lynch decided to focus on parts of the
plot that didn't really need to be there. Whereas like I feel like Villeneuve, he knew exactly what needed to be included in the film for everybody to understand what was going on. So to me, that's what, to me, a good adaptation respects the material and respects the audience as well by like not including extraneous details.
Have you read the Dune book?
Yes, I have.
Oh, okay. So you're actually coming from a place where you know what the heck is going on.
Mm-hmm. But here's the thing, though. The David Lynch adaptation, he completely changed the ending. We won't get into spoilers, but he completely changed the ending. He added some things that while they are present in the books, did not need to be in this movie because they showed up later in the series. So it's just about those like little details that are either overlooked or really focused on for no reason. And that's why I think like Villeneuve's version is better. But
well, then why don't we get going with the plot summary? Because I kind of want to talk about this original Dune, because when you mentioned the ending, I have a couple of thoughts on that, especially in comparison to the 2021 movie. And I don't want to jump ahead of myself too quick.
Yeah, okay. Here we go. In the far future, the powerful Atreides family is given control of Arrakis, the desert planet known as Dune. The Emperor has tasked Duke Leto Atreides with protecting the spice melange, a substance that powers spaceflight and everything in the known universe. It is the most important thing. Unbeknownst to Leto and his son Paul, a dark web of betrayal is being spread. A dark web of betrayal is being spun around them as they fight their sworn enemies for control of the planet. And that's all you need to know about Dune.
Oh my God, when you were reading that out, I was like picturing a Star Wars crawl of text. That was masterful. You set the stage there. That was an epic recounting.
It's an epic book. It needed an epic plot summary.
Yeah, the tone, your voice tone, you had a lower register. It really sold it. I liked it. Mm-hmm.
That's where I live, in that low register.
No, it was good.
But so when I was writing this, I started to like go into detail about like the Harkonnens and the Atreides having this feud and the Emperor plotting to betray them. And it made me realize that adapting something like Dune with all of these players and all of these factions vying for control and just these plots and subterfuge within subterfuge, it's really hard to sum up. So I really commend Villeneuve for his ability to make a very palatable movie from this really dense text. You can see what happens when it goes wrong with the David Lynch version. So
I want to outset this by, I think a lot of people kind of crap on the 1984 Dune. I don't think it's that terrible.
It's not as bad as people say. It really isn't. It's more campy.
Yes.
But it reminds me of this. It's almost like the same camp as, Return of the Jedi, with the Ewoks and stuff. Like,
well, I think this turns it up a little bit higher, but I get what you're saying. This is like, to me, this is just a cheesy space opera.
Yeah. Oh, even with like the soundtrack, it's like a rock opera.
It's by Toto.
It's by Toto. Yeah. I saw that and I was like, wait, this is insane. This doesn't make any sense. But then when the guitars come in and they're riding on the worms, it's like, it's so good. It all just fits. It somehow fits.
Well, and to be honest, my favorite thing about the original Dune, I like the cheese, and I like some of those elements that are more heavily prevalent in 80s films. So two things in particular, before like jumping into the actual story and the characters, I love the use of body horror in it. So like just looking at the scene where Paul sticks his hand in the box in the 2021 movie, it's just Timothée Chalamet grimacing in pain. But in the original, you see his hand melting. You get those like cool wax hand special effects. I love stuff like that, and I find you get it a little bit more in those pre-2000 movies than you do now.
It's very Lynchian. It's very like David Lynch as well.
So I really like that. And then the second thing is I love the use of common items to create a sci-fi theme. So like looking at the Star Wars movies, it's stupid fun facts like this where like the communicator that Qui-Gon uses in the Phantom Menace, all that is like a Gillette razor that they just touched up to make like a communicator.
Did not know that.
Whereas like in Dune, for instance, the enemy soldiers, they're really just dressed up in like radioactive suits, and they're just
with like
around.
green lights inside the helmets.
I love that cheesy element to that stuff where it's like
it's charming.
You can clearly tell that they're just repurposing things at their disposal. And it's like, to be honest, it's also probably to save money, but it's stuff like that I like, and it's the same reason why I like Grogu and the Mandalorian, even though you can clearly tell it's a puppet. It's the charm to it all.
It is, yeah. I feel like they were pushing the envelope for what they could do with their budget and for the special effects at the time.
Yeah.
So it's still, in a lot of ways, if you take it in context, it holds up.
It was a $40 million budget.
It was, and that's in $111 million adjusted for inflation. Dune 2021, by comparison, has a $165 million budget. Yeah, so very similar. You bring up Star Wars, and fun fact: David Lynch actually passed on directing Return of the Jedi to do Dune.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. 1983 was when Jedi came out, and 84 was when Dune came out. He like, there's a famous interview where Lynch was approached by George Lucas, and David Lynch is talking about it, and he describes himself getting a headache as George Lucas is describing to him like the Wookiees and like things in the Star Wars universe. So it's like interesting that Return of the Jedi would have been a very different movie had David Lynch directed it.
Well, I also think for David Lynch it's a good idea to pass, because I feel like if David Lynch took over that film, you'd almost get into a Rian Johnson, The Last Jedi type situation where you have a director with a very different vision of probably where he would want the story to go, because David Lynch is an odd character. Like, look at his movies, but also just look at his perspective of film.
Have you seen his YouTube channel where it's just him saying what day it is, and like pulling a ball out of a jar that has a number on it, and he just reads the number? Have you seen his YouTube channel?
I haven't seen it, but I've heard of his YouTube channel.
Yeah, so you're right. He is quite an odd character.
But no, that's interesting. I can't say I am sad to see him not direct it, because once again, it would be a very different film. But also, like, this movie's not bad, and I think it does a lot for pushing sci-fi. Like, this was a popular movie as far as I know when it came out, and it still kind of remains a cult hit.
Yeah, I think there are people who really appreciate some of those stylistic choices that David Lynch put in there, because the back half of Dune, the novel, gets really weird and, like, I guess esoteric.
Yeah.
In the lore. So, you know, the fact that you see all these, like, all of Paul's visions look really good, and they translate really well in the 1984 version, because that's David Lynch's bread and butter.
Yeah.
Premonitions and, waking dreams and stuff like that, and surrealist elements. So I think it, I don't know if it's really in, some of the articles that I've read about 1984 Dune, they look back on it pretty fondly. Like, there's an article in the Vulture about, it was released before 2021's Dune, and they were kind of making the same point as you, that there was a lot to love about Dune 1984, and a lot that you can learn about David Lynch's filmmaking from it. So it's, I don't know. Yeah.
Was this one of his first movies? Like, did he have a big filmography before then? I don't really know his career that well.
He did Eraserhead and then Elephant Man, which he won like 8 Oscars for, or was nominated for 8 Oscars. So he did those two, and then he did Dune. there was a quote here from David Lynch about it kind of gives insight into what I think he learned about filmmaking and just like doing a big movie like this, where so one of the things is he didn't have a final cut. So I think there were things that he wanted to include that he couldn't. And here's the quote. Quote, "Don't make a film if it can't be the film you want to make. It's a sick joke. It'll kill you." End quote. So he had very strong feelings about the way that Dune turned out, I think.
Yeah.
Because I could see him making it like a 5-hour movie. You know, that just seems like something David Lynch would want to do. And that actually calls back to the first time that somebody tried to adapt Dune. I don't know if you know much about it, but Alejandro Jodorowsky, he tried to adapt Dune in the early 70s, I think it was, and it ended up like being like 10 hours long. Like his plan was for it to be 10 hours. He was going to have a bunch of big names, but like Orson Welles, he wanted Orson Welles to be in it. There were a few other ones, and then like some big names to do the soundtrack. It just like started to balloon and balloon. And he wanted to have Salvador Dali like do the the artwork for the movie. So it was like crazy. All this is just to say that like the fact that David Lynch was actually able to create something, you know, when others had maybe failed, it is a testament to his filmmaking abilities.
Yeah, no, and like he was one of the screenwriters for it, so he came in with a mission. Whether or not you agree with how it ended or how the story was told, I guess that's up to the individual. But like, to compress as much content and history and backstory in 2 hours and 20 minutes, he did a decent job.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess we could just like start with Dune 1984 and go through some of the stuff that we enjoyed about it. And I have a note here from the beginning. The opening scene where Princess Irulan is like kind of giving the exposition. It was so funny. I was like laughing out loud when she faded away and then faded back in and was like, "Oh yes, like I also forgot to tell you these other things."
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, that sets the tone for the camp of this movie.
Yeah.
Like it really is not taking itself so seriously.
Yeah. I'm really surprised you remembered her name.
Oh, it's cool because she narrates like part of the book.
Okay. Because I was like, is she the Emperor's daughter?
Yeah, she's the Emperor's daughter.
For anyone listening, I should premise this. I am not good with names, so I am definitely gonna mispronounce things and probably
nice.
Get
That's what they're here
wrong.
for.
Yeah. No, I'm not great at that stuff. So the fact that you remembered who she was, kudos to you. But like looking at the start of the movie, the one thing in terms of a character perspective that struck me the most, you have a very different Paul in this movie than in 2021. And just looking apart from the obvious age difference and the fact that one guy looks like he could bench quite a bit, and Timothée Chalamet, no offense to Timothée Chalamet because I'm built kind of the same, looks kind of sickly and like he's recovering from something.
Yeah.
So apart from that, but the Paul Atreides in the original Dune, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, he seems a lot more confident in terms of both his prowess with weirding, his prowess as a political figure. He's a much more confident individual in terms of who he is and his abilities than Timothée Chalamet is.
Yeah, they wrote Paul in 2021 as a little more, I guess, maybe more sympathetic in terms of his place within the Atreides family. Because like in the book, a lot of the conversations between the Duke and Paul are about him taking over and like his, Leto like showing Paul how to rule and how he should rule and how he should treat his subjects and how he should treat the Fremen as well. So I think in 2021, Villeneuve was going for that as him being a little bit more naive. It's interesting that you picked up on that, because I had never really thought him to be more confident in Lynch's version. He just seemed more he just seemed older, I guess.
Oh no, 100%.
Like a little more, and totally, I get it now. It like translates to more confidence. Like he, and maybe we won't get into the end bit, but there was a comment that I have about how he leads the Fremen in the end. Do you think that's also because like Kyle MacLachlan is just like a more he just exudes more confidence as like an actor?
I don't know, because I like Timothée Chalamet is pretty well rounded. Like honestly, it could just be the fact that it's that 80s cheese, and you're not going to play a shy character. I feel like just movies from that era, you're going to have a confident lead.
It's more bombastic in that way. Like he is like prepared to, well, I don't know, I guess they both are pretty confident in, like, when the hunter seeker drone in both movies, it happens kind of at the same time. They both are pretty confident in their combat abilities.
But like in terms of the original Dune, I don't get the impression that Paul Atreides in that film wanted to do anything but kind of take over for his dad. Whereas in this other one, there's a scene where he's like, and honestly, it's a good scene. I love Oscar Isaac, where Timothée Chalamet doesn't really want to be the Duke, and he kind of expresses that. And then you got Oscar Isaac as the Duke saying, you know what? If you don't want to be the Duke, that's fine. You're everything I ever needed. All I need you to be is my son. And I was like, oh, it's so heartwarming.
Yeah, it's nice. They could have, they could have really made Leto, I guess, solely focused on leading, and I think that actually matches the book's portrayal of him. Unfortunately, in the 1984 version, I feel like we didn't really get much of a characterization for him in the same way. Like, even he got it a little bit more, but even like Duncan Idaho, he's way more of a character in 2021. In the 1984 version, he dies like right away. There's only like one or two scenes with him. This is a bigger problem I have with 1984, is that like he tried to do the whole book in one movie. 2021 could just take its time with it. So anyways, that's not something I want to harp on too much, because that's just how it is.
But I like that you picked up on that too, because that's something I wrote too. In terms of like the two movies, almost every character in the 2021 movie has way more personality and depth than any character in the original Dune. Like in the original Dune, it's really Paul's story and it's Lady Jessica's story, and then the Baron definitely gets some more screen time, and you get some of that, but it's really Paul and Lady Jessica, and everyone else is kind of just in the periphery. Like, as you said, Duncan's in two scenes. There's the scene where he first meets him at in the hangar, and then Duncan goes off, and then basically Duncan's dead the next time you see him. But even for some of the other characters, like, I don't know what the general's name is, so he's played by Patrick Stewart in the original. Gurney. Yeah, Gurney. And then he's what's his name? Who plays him in the 2021 movie?
Josh Brolin.
Josh Brolin, yes.
Thanos.
Patrick Stewart like played Gurney deadpan. He was so boring. And like Gurney in the 2021 movie, he doesn't have like a bunch more screen time, but there's all these like subtle nuances to his character that provide some more depth and background. And like this goes back to our discussion in Prisoners, where Denis' philosophy is to imply things rather than to actually like directly say things. And there was moments in Gurney's character where I really got that impression. And it's tiny things too. Like when he's first training with Paul Atreides, and then Paul's like, I don't want to fight. And then he's like, well, you don't really get that choice. And he then starts talking about the Harkonnens. And he like, at one moment he's like, you don't know what they're like. They're beasts. But he like growls it. Like you could tell this guy has beef with them, and he's been to war.
It's they are sworn enemies. Like,
I love the growl on it. And then like even Duncan was given a little bit more depth, not in terms of just his interactions with Timothy Chalamet, because he definitely develops a lot more personality. To be honest, that's just the actor bringing in a lot of his charisma to it. But in terms of like Duncan's role in the larger universe, there's when the Baron's, I'm going to call him the Baron's advisor, meets with the Emperor soldiers and he's talking about the Atreides force, he's like, don't underestimate these guys. They're trained by Gurney and Duncan. Like, just that one line alone, you're like, okay, Duncan also has a reputation. Like, he's somewhat of an important figure himself.
Dune 2021, you get the sense that all of these characters have lived lives and had stories before the movie, whereas like in 1984 it's not so much implied. And to go back to Villeneuve's philosophy of showing, not exactly telling, the inner monologues in 1984, I didn't like them at first. By the end I accepted them for what they were. They kind of made me laugh, but it's just so inefficient storytelling in a movie form, because there's a lot of that type of narration in the book. So maybe that's what they were trying to go for in 84.
Think so. Yeah.
But it just bogs it all down. It's like you can show their face and not have them saying anything in their head. I wonder if that's like a bit of studio meddling, you know, like if they were worried that people weren't sure what was going on, so they added them in. Maybe that was a stylistic choice by David Lynch.
I could see either, to be honest.
It could be either, yeah. Who's your favorite character? Out of
in which one?
Movie. For each movie, one like for in 2021 and 84.
Okay, so 84, I don't even have to think about it. It's Paul Atreides' sister.
Oh yes, yeah. Aaliyah.
She's in it for such a short time, but
yeah,
Jesus, she's frightening,
terrifying.
Oh my god! But I loved her. She stole every scene from me, and I am so excited to see what she's like in part 2.
One. Yeah,
yeah. No, she's easily my favorite character. But in terms of like the main characters, the ones that you just don't see in the last 30 minutes and have 3 scenes, I like Lady Jessica a lot in the 84 movie. I thought she did a pretty good job.
Yeah, her performance was great. And even watching her go through like the transformation into the Reverend Mother, essentially, and like drinking the water of life. Yeah,
I have no idea what the water of life is, by the way.
Yeah,
that's always confused me. Where do they get it from? Like, I thought the water of life was so. Like in the 2021 movie, the leader of the Fremen like spits on the ground, and it's like, no, it's not an insult. He's just like giving you his body's moisture. And it's like, that's not the body of the water of life. The water of life is like some sort of poison that the Bene Gesserit drink, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a thing that originated on Arrakis. I believe it is the bile of like a sandworm. Yeah. So, but in 2021, the water of life is also like the water, like it's water literally, like the waters of like Caladan. It's like Villeneuve draws comparisons between the water in people, the Fremen with the Fremen stuff, and then also Caladan's water, and how Paul is like kind of the bridge between all of them. It's way less literal.
That's the only part that I truly like don't understand about these stories yet. I don't get what the water of life is, but that's okay. I don't really need to know it per se. Like,
it doesn't matter, because it's more all of that, the Bene Gesserit I guess prophecy that they have with the Fremen is like not really talked about in 2021 for a good reason. I think it's like they kind of talk around it. It doesn't need to be said. It's efficient in the way that it presents the lore.
But going back to the differences between the inner monologue and Denise's style of implying things, I like the inner monologue style from the perspective of it adds some fantastical element to the story. It does make it seem a little bit more sci-fi, but at the same time, you could take two scenes of like, I think you're gonna like the Denise version more, but when Paul and Lady Jessica are first taken away and they're going to be dropped off in the desert to be killed, in that scene, in the 1984 version, you get a lot of the inner dialogue where they're kind of talking through the situation. So like Lady Jessica, she sees the doctor's triangle markings, and she's like, "Oh, the doctor left us 2 suits. He's telling us that like we kind of need to figure out how to escape." Whereas that same scene in the 2021 version, you just see the sign. You don't need to be told that it's the doctor's sign. You know it's his little triangle symbol. Or like also instead of having the inner monologue of figuring out how they're going to escape, there's that like cool scene where like Lady Jessica does a little sign language to him. I like how 2021 does it. So while I like the cheesy element of the inner monologue, I do like when it just lets me figure it out for myself. Makes me feel a little smarter.
Yeah, and it's more natural. People don't have inner monologues like that. Maybe some people do, but it's not so formal. So, yeah, again, I just think that is all chalked up to efficient storytelling by Villeneuve.
Another example of the implying not showing is in the 1984 version, because we're jumping into basically like a lifelong feud at its climax here. So at some point, both the directors in their films need to establish why the Baron hates Duke Leto and kind of like where that conflict's coming from. So in the original, the Baron kind of shows his hatred by being fanatical and like screaming all the time. And then there's like this one really nasty scene where when they capture Lady Jessica, the Baron spits on her and he gives her a little spittle.
Oh yeah. Disgusting.
He literally spits on her. I just like that he called it spittle. But in the new Doom, the Baron's a lot more imposing, far less cartoony. But that same sense of like personal hatred is conveyed without words. Where Duke Leto is captured, he's sitting there humiliated, passed out across the table, completely naked. Not once did the Baron actually like scream at any time or act fanatical, but he was clearly embarrassing the Duke and humiliating him in like a very vindictive way.
It wasn't overt.
No,
it was more subtle. It was a humiliation becoming of a lifelong blood feud, because that's so much more humiliating than screaming in somebody's face.
No, it was just an act of raw power.
Yeah, it was. He was completely in control of that situation, and that's why I like Baron Harkonnen in the 2021 version, because obviously he is like a monster and he is awful, and there's so many bad things about him, but I just found that in 1984 version it was too much. It was almost laughable. He's like a Saturday morning cartoon bad guy.
Well, in the 1984 one, when you think about it, like how crazy he's acting all the time, I also kind of question like, how are you operating or running like this great house responsible for multiple planets? Like, you really seem off your rocker. Whereas Stellan Skarsgård, who like excellent choice, like casting people are how they see these people for these roles blows my mind. But Stellan Skarsgård, he convinces me that like this guy's a tyrant. Like he understands the financial implications of being a leader. He understands the political dimensions. He understands how to convey his power in a terrifying manner. Like this guy is someone who I'm convinced like could run multiple planets and maintain that control.
He's more of a mastermind in that sense. He's already looking steps ahead. Whereas 1984 Baron just seems crazy, like a crazy dictator, essentially. I do love Giedi Prime though in 1984, the Harkonnens' homeworld.
Yeah.
It's such a cool like set and design, so iconic. Like I feel like I'll remember those like green walls and the tram car and just like all the weird stuff. Like this is something that I thought was interesting. There is some weirdness in Giedi Prime in 2021 with like that spider creature walking around
with those nasty human hands.
Yeah, but then you look back into 1984, and there's so much more weird stuff. Like there's that scene where maybe this isn't on Giedi Prime, but where they have that cow like hung upside down and they're like shocking it, or
Rapidan like rips out his tongue and starts eating it.
Yeah, exactly. Or like there's that part where he has like the little juice box with a creature in it and he squishes the creature and then drinks the liquid. Yeah. Or
Rabin's a freak.
Yeah, he is a freak. And I feel like they did a good job of portraying him that way. The other weird one was the cat that Thufir had to like milk to get the poison out of the like or the antidote out of the like, and it's attached to a rat in a box.
Why is it taped to a rat?
Yeah, that was fun. That was fun. Weird. I feel like I'll always remember the Harkonnens in 1984.
Then there's also I don't know what they are, like those weird worm creatures in the glass cages. I think they're like the people in charge of the spice, or they're
worm
like
creatures.
So in the 1985, they're not worms. In the 1984,
the navigator.
Yeah, like they're the people in charge of like the Space Guild or whatever, aren't they?
Yeah, they're very high up in the Spacing Guild, and they're like I guess level 3 or stage 3 navigator is what that one is, and that was one of those. Just to go back to that, my point earlier is like that was one of those things that David Lynch added in. That didn't need to be in there, while being a very good opening scene. I think it was fantastic, and the design of the creature is crazy weird, and I loved it. It just didn't need to be there because I think it would just confuse people more. It's like, what are these things? And they took it to the extreme, whereas like in the book, they're mostly humanoid from my understanding. They just have like flippers because they float around in the spice gas and they don't need their feet or hands. So yeah, that's where the storytelling is not very efficient. While being very interesting, it just doesn't need to be there, and it just confuses people more.
But like it's a very political plot, the books, the movies, etc. And it is interesting because you get a lot of that in the 84 movie and you get much less of it in the 2021 movie, and we're probably going to explore in the next movie a little bit, but like we don't see the Emperor at all in the 2021 movie. All we see is his representative, but in the 84 movie, like it is kind of cool to see him because you really get a clearer picture of the layers at play. So here you have these two houses that are fighting. Here's the Emperor above, who's like, okay, I feel like the Atreides house might be getting a little bit too big and it's challenging me. So I'm going to bring these houses down a notch. But then also, the Emperor kind of almost is accountable to the Space Guild in a way, because the Space Guild also kind of seems to run the show. So, like, yes, while it complicates the plot, and I'm going to, like, take your word that it probably shouldn't be in there, it is also cool to see, like, it's not just the Emperor who's fiddling around with things. There's also like this corporate enterprise that is also meddling at the same time. Like there's a lot of layers to it.
Well, and even then, like in the book, the Spacing Guild is like a shareholder of the Chom Corporation, which oversees the spice mining. So all of the, and this is, I'll go on a bit of a tangent here, but all of the houses of the Lancerat, which is like an organization of the great houses, they all are vying for control of shares in the Chom Corporation. So you don't get to see that in 2021, but I do agree with you that alluding to all of these different layers of power is a good thing. And I think that's maybe why I found that scene opening to be really interesting, because here is like in the Irulan in the opening says, the Padishah Emperor is the emperor of the known universe, but yet you see him, he's kind of like impotent the face of the Spacing Guild, because in reality, they do control literally everything. Did you find it confusing, the opening scene, or were you just like taking it all in as it came at you?
It was a lot. I'm gonna be completely honest. I had to like watch a little YouTube video kind of explaining the plot afterwards. But like in retrospect, looking back at it, I did like that depth. And I am hoping it's something that we kind of explore a little bit in part 2 of Dune. So we can hopefully see a little bit more of those political elements. But like as an average viewer, if you're not the type of person to look into things afterwards or watch like YouTube analyses, pardon me, I do think you're gonna miss a lot of the depth to the original Dune, and in that perspective, it's a little bit alienating.
Yeah, it can come off as just like shock value for shock value's sake. I will say about like the just to touch on like the beginning of both movies and how the exposition is laid out. I really did not like the way that 1984 talked about the exposition of, obviously the Emperor mentioned the feud and his plan. But then like Paul is looking at his iPad thing and it's like, here's the Caladan, the homeworld of the Atreides, and here's Giedi Prime, and this is Arrakis, and the Baron has sworn to take the ducal signet ring from Leto.
Yeah.
Maybe that's an 80s cheese thing. Maybe that's studio interference. I don't know. But to me, it just seemed a little clunky. I can appreciate that they were just trying to keep people abreast of what was going on in this complex world. But somehow Villeneuve did a good job of explaining what Arrakis is, because there's that scene where Paul is reading a book, and then he has like a projector that's like explaining to him what Arrakis is and all that kind of stuff. And then also in 84, they talk about spice as being this really important thing. And it's like, Paul should know all of this. Why is he being told it again? But that's just clunky exposition. One of the few instances where I was like, that was a bit too much, but that's just me.
But even looking at like explaining Arrakis, 2021 did such a good job at actually giving Arrakis a bit of character, because you get all these scenes where they're talking about the importance of water. There's the sacred trees. There's the fact that within like an hour, the temperature spikes another 30 degrees and they can't be out after a certain hour because it gets way too hot. So they shut down the whole facility by like closing all the blinds. Denis does a really good job at making Arrakis like a lethal place. Like you are convinced that if someone just gets dropped in the middle of the desert, they're going to die probably.
Yeah, it really highlights the importance of the still suits and how the Fremen even just conduct themselves out in the desert. And the shield wall as well being like a really important thing. You get Arrakeen, I think is the city. Arrakeen, or they in 1984 they call the city Arrakeen, but then they use Arrakeen as a word to say like of Arrakis, so like Arrakeen skies or whatever. Whereas, like, I think the city is called that. Whatever. That's just me getting confused. But Arrakeen feels like a place. The palace feels like a place. It feels real, and the people seem real. Whereas, like in 1984, it just seems like a bunch of hallways. That could be a limitation of the time as well, too.
So I kind of want to jump into this. What were your thoughts on the ending of 1984? You kind of alluded to it before. I guess my biggest issue, and I made a note of this. So the new Dune movie, the original Dune movie catches up with the end of the new Dune movie at the 1.5 hour mark. So
it's like basically the same movie up to that point.
Yeah, but then the original Dune, I don't know if we talked about this on the podcast or if this was just a comment we made before it, but the original Dune's only 2 hours and 20 minutes. So they left about 40 minutes to deal with the war. Paul training the Fremen, and
falling
my understanding,
in love with Shani or whatever her name is.
Oh, that got nothing. That was like a couple.
She was not
flashbacks.
A character,
no,
unfortunately.
But there's like this one scene where the Emperor eventually finds out that he doesn't know it's Paul at the time, but this individual is basically like launching guerrilla warfare on the planet, and this line is tossed out like it's been going on for 2 years. So,
well, yeah, it says 2 years have passed, essentially. Like, Irulan narrates that. I believe.
So years of content has just been condensed.
Skipped over.
In like 30 to 40 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, that was, the last 40 minutes were a bit of a mess in that respect. Not that it was shot poorly or whatever, although you can see the budget running out. As the movie goes on, like there's a map painting of the Emperor's spaceship like coming down from, then they have like the Highliner spaceships there, and I was like, oh my god, that looks like something made in like MS Paint. But I mean, sorry to the map painters, that's kind of
no
insulting.
Offense.
But yeah, you can just tell. So I don't know. My thought on the ending is it's very rushed. Obviously, there's nothing you can change about that unless you were going to add another hour or two onto the movie's runtime, which they might have been able to do. But they touched on the important things, like him being able to figuring out how to like tame the sandworms, drinking the water of life or whatever. My problem with the ending is that in the end, there's all this fighting, this huge war, and it just like boils down to Fade, Rutha, and Paul having a knife fight, and everybody's watching. Like it's some prison brawl.
Yeah, that was cheesy.
It was pretty cheesy, but whatever. It's fine. It's fun to watch them fight, and it's all campy and good. But so there's that, and then he becomes the Kwisatz Haderach, or at least his sister says that he is, and then he becomes he basically sets into motion this act of God where it starts to rain. And my problem with that is like it's very literal. Like David Lynch turned him into like a supernatural leader, like this Messiah-like figure. Whereas like I feel like Dune, the book, was much more critical of leaders and messiahs and people who, claim to be part of a prophecy. So in this instance, it just felt really flat to me. I don't know how Denis is going to be like. I don't know how he's going to do it, but David Lynch clearly took it in the direction of Paul being a godlike figure, the hand of God, essentially.
Well, they referenced him being a godlike figure too.
They did, yeah, they did. And in the book, the way that Irulan narrates it is like little snippets before the chapters, and she is like recounting the history of Muad'Dib, which is interesting because it frames him as like a mythological figure, but you get to see him doing things that or making mistakes just like any other man would. And it is very humanizing. Where in 1984, obviously this comes up again. It's a time thing. We might have been able to see him make these mistakes and do all of these things, but we just don't get to see it because there's not enough time. So that's my main criticism.
Do you like Denis? He's only planning on doing a 2-parter, correct? Like he's not thinking.
I don't think it's a trilogy. I don't think so.
I know he's thrown out the idea of doing a Zendaya third movie, but I don't think that's Paul's story by any means.
No, because Dune Messiah is the next one he would be adapting, I think.
Okay. Do you think
it focuses on her character?
Assuming that this next movie is a similar length, so like 2.5 hours, do you think that's enough time to get the rest of the book and actually create a fulfilling and satisfying conclusion? Like, or is there just still too much content? Because, like, as we already said, I don't know if this is the same time period in the book, but 2 years got skipped over in the original Dune. So is Denis going to show those whole 2 years? Are we going to collapse it? Or are we going to take some creative freedom with the content and not make it 2 years and make it like a week-long guerrilla warfare campaign? Like, I don't know. Do you just think that there's going to be enough time to actually set everything in motion? Because once again, I don't even know how important Paul's sister is. Is that enough time to make her a fully realized character? I don't know.
Yeah, it's tough to say. I think that he could do it one of two ways. I think he could have a time skip between the two movies, and we pick up like in the middle of this guerrilla war. And we then get information fed to us about like how it came to be, or, you know, how he came to befriend the Fremen. It could go like that. Because I do believe that like part of what makes some of these, and I maybe with Denis in particular, he tends to start his movies like very close to the end, if that makes any sense. Like he's not gonna, it just comes down to him focusing on what's important. Him being like him participating in this guerrilla war might not be that important, but we might see him, I guess, like maybe it starts with him taming the worms. I don't really know. I'm not 100% sure. You bring up a good point. It might not be enough to do just two movies, because everything starts to become really out there, and really it becomes less of a hard sci-fi movie and more surreal sci-fi. So, or the book, sorry. But yeah.
It almost would have been interesting if we got another half hour to the 2021 version, and instead of ending with him meeting the Fremen, it ends with at least some form of guerrilla warfare starting. I don't know, like I don't think you would want to jump into him training the Fremen in the weirding ways, but start with or end with the guerrilla warfare beginning, and then for part two just begin, and you could have like a brief text screen saying 2 years have passed. Paul has begun training the Fremen. They've been at war with the Harkonnens in guerrilla warfare, and like having that like kind of Star Wars yeah, and then you kind of get the best of both worlds, where at least I feel you have a logical time skip.
I think it's more important to show Paul becoming a leader. So whether that is through training the Fremen, or trying to teach them about like how spice is collected so they can actually disrupt it, or teaching them the weirding ways. But that's something that David Lynch added. It's in the book, it's less literal. It's not like a box that you wear on your neck and a little gun that you use. So that could be a little bit different. I feel like it could be maybe a little more implied. And part of what makes the Fremen really deadly warriors is that they live in a deadly environment. So maybe it's more about Paul learning how to fight their way, you know, instead of being noble and fighting in these great wars. He's taught how to wage guerrilla warfare. You know, the Fremen are like quite they're not aggressive, but they kill. They're into protecting their livelihood, and it's about them, you know, so they have to survive. I don't know. It could be interesting to see that.
Paul knows air power. He knows water power. It's time to learn desert power.
Desert power. And that's like, when Oscar Isaac said desert power, I was like, yes, that is so good, because that's like a literal line. I'm pretty sure that line is right from the book almost.
Yeah, I actually, like, once again, all the characters in the 2021 version are just more fleshed out. I loved Oscar Isaac in it. Oscar Isaac is just exudes charisma.
Mm-hmm. It's a tragic death.
Yeah.
Yeah. He brings that life to the character.
I also felt in this new version, there was some moments that I liked better, in terms of, I feel like if you didn't know the story, you could get a couple genuine surprises. So just leading up to his death, for instance, in the 84 version, it's clearly foreshadowed. It's not foreshadow. It's clearly shown that the doctor is the person the Baron has on the inside. Yeah, like he's scanning for the notes page. There's a couple other scenes that kind of deal with it. Whereas I don't think there's any foreshadowing that the doctor is the man on the inside in the 2021 version, unless I just missed that.
It's a little more subtle, I think. I think there's a scene where Raban, or because Fade is not in 2021. So Raban, I'm also very excited to see who gets cast as Fade Rutha. But Raban and the Baron are talking, and I'm pretty sure he just says that there's a man on the inside, or that they have, or maybe they talk about breaking the imperial conditioning of the man on the inside, and they talk about how Yue has imperial conditioning.
Okay. So there could be a little bit of foreshadowing.
Yeah, there is a little bit. But for me, I wasn't really looking for it because I knew Yue was the traitor from the beginning.
Yeah, like we have the benefit of knowing the plot, but as someone who's new to this, like I think of my parents, for instance, I can't imagine my dad ever seen the original Dune. That would have been a fun little twist. I feel like, it could add some emotional stake to the story. Like I was going to say Jared Leto.
It's
Duke
Morbin
Leto.
time.
Yeah. Duke Leto's death, it was tragic. It was sad.
Yeah, I really felt for him because Oscar Isaac is charismatic, but he's also very noble. And it's like actually could not be a more perfect Leto. In the same way that I think everybody is the perfect version of the character. Like I could not see anybody else as Lady Jessica's a tough one because I don't really know that actress.
Oh, Rebecca Ferguson is so good. She was
what else is she in?
She was the villain in Doctor Sleep. She's in the new Mission Impossible movies.
Oh yes, yeah. Okay.
What else is she in? I'd have to search it. She's a fantastic.
She stole the show. Like I think I agree with you. I liked Jessica in 1984 for for her performance. But man, like the raw emotional power of like Rebecca Ferguson, is that her name? In Dune 2021, like it's great. That scene with the two of them in the tent is with her and Paul in the tent. So good.
So good. And that's another example of not being we're getting a less confident Paul, because in that scene, the tent scene, I completely forgot about it. He lashes out at her. It's like, why'd you make me this freak?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's your fault for all these visions that I'm having and stuff like that. He's not grateful for it.
No, and like in the 84 version, he just rolls with the punches. He's like, yeah, no, I'm superhuman.
This is it. I'm ready to be the Kwisatz Haderach.
Yeah, the only characters like Dave Bautista as Rabin, I thought he did a great job.
Super scary.
Charlotte Rampling as the Reverend Mother, great job.
Mm-hmm,
David Dask, I can't pronounce his last name.
Daschamel or Dashalmain.
He was in it briefly. Great job. The only characters
he's great as Piter.
I wasn't totally convinced as of Javier Bardem.
As Stilgar.
I love him as an actor. I just don't think he got enough screen time for me to or got enough depth for me to like buy into him yet. So I'm waiting, because Javier Bardem is an amazing actor, so I have no doubt he's going to sell me later.
I think he'll be a better Stilgar than Lincoln. What's his name from 1984? Yeah. He's also in Twin Peaks, but again, though, that is also the crux of that movie, is maybe he would have been a good character if they had the time. So I'm glad that Zendaya and Javier Bardem get their chance to actually be characters.
I gotta say, though, it's funny how heavily Zendaya was marketed and like going to all the premiere events. She's in it for 2 scenes.
Oh, definitely. I mean, like, I guess doesn't he has like some more visions of her? Then you're right.
I would be surprised if she had more than 120 seconds of screen time.
Interesting.
They just threw out the Zendaya name and hyped it up.
And I feel like she was in a lot of the marketing.
Oh, she was, and she was front and center in every red carpet event. It was like I seen this funny thing. What's his name? Who plays why can't I think of his name? The guy with the metal arm in Captain America, the Winter Soldier. Who plays the Winter Soldier?
I don't know his name. Zendaya was, I think she's going to be a really good Chani.
Yeah, no, she's like a very good actress.
Yeah, she'll like it. And this is one thing that was interesting about the promotion of this movie is that like even Denny went in interviews said that he made the movie for the big screen. And when I heard about that, not just that interview in general, but just the discourse around the movie, when I heard that, I was like, it's just a corporate cash grab. They just want us to go back to the theaters. It's all a ploy. It's all a ploy. It's all of course the marketing is going to push us to go see it in theaters. I kind of get it. Like I was being cynical, but call me a shill, whatever. I thought the way that the cinematography is done, the way the music was composed, it kind of made sense to watch it in IMAX like I did. I would not want to watch it any other way.
Oh, forget IMAX. I'm going to Screen X.
Screen X. You can see more of the desert. There's more sand per square inch of screen.
Like every movie is going to be better in theater. At least every like epic or action movie is going to be better in theaters, or horror movie, to be honest.
Yeah. I don't think it's going to be like, because Top Gun, now they're saying Top Gun is going to be the movie that saves, and Tom Cruise are going to be the ones that save the movies. You know, I think that makes a little more sense. Whereas like Dune, I think was a good return to form for like cinema and the movie going experience.
I don't think everyone who keeps saying like this is the return to movie theaters, I don't think we're ever going to be.
It's not going to be the same.
No, people like my dad's a great example. He's like, why would I go to a movie theater when I have like a 65-inch OLED TV with full like theater sound system in my basement, and I can just go take intermissions. I can.
You don't have to deal with people being like loud and eating their popcorn loud beside you.
Well, and like he's decked out his sound system. So like he has speakers on the roof. So like say you're watching Top Gun and a jet's flying towards you, it'll hit the speakers in not chronological order, in like
spatial order.
Yes, so it'll like hit the speaker at the front of the room, then the middle, then the back. So like you kind of feel like it's flying over you.
Yeah.
And he's just like, why would I ever go to a theater again? Like,
yeah, and to pay for overpriced snacks. Like,
yeah.
No, I get that.
So do I think we're gonna go back to the way it was? No. Do I like theaters a lot? Absolutely. But like. The emotions that you feel in a theater when you're watching things, it's elevated than what you would have at home. It's
because you're experiencing it with other people.
Yeah, it's good. I don't think I'd seen this movie in theaters. I'm pretty sure I only seen Dune once it came out.
It was on like, you bought it on like a platform, didn't you?
Yeah, I have the 4K
was it YouTube
copy.
Oh right, yes.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen it in theaters. Would I have liked to? Yeah, probably. I'll go see Dune 2 in theaters though.
Yeah, it was definitely worth it. And you know, I think the movie theater experience is a lot different now, just physically. You know, being able to go to a theater that has reclining seats.
Oh yes.
And you know, like extra wide places to have your drinks. I think we talked about this even on the last podcast.
Yeah.
I am not in a position to own a theater room. So in that case, it actually like is a great deal for me. But yeah, no, I think overall the marketing, I did not buy into it at first. And then I, on a limb, wanted to go see it because my partner loves the book and she really wanted to see it. And so we both went and it was worth it.
So I finally figured out who the Winter Soldier is. It's Sebastian Stan.
Okay. I know what he looks like. I could probably pick him out of a crowd, but I don't know what other movies he's been in.
If you haven't seen Fresh, go watch Fresh on Disney Plus. Amazing. He doesn't have a lot outside of Marvel. Like Marvel's definitely is where he's known for. But there's like this one interview scene where he was telling this story where he told his mom to go see Black Panther. And he's like, Mom, I'm in Black Panther. Go see it. And his mom goes and watches it. And then she phones him afterwards. And she's like, I thought you were in this movie. I didn't see you at all. And he's like, yeah, no, I'm in the end credit scene. And she's like, oh, I left before then. That's how I feel about Zendaya in this movie.
Yeah.
It's like all the marketing was like, yeah, Zendaya's going to be in it. It's going to be so good. And I'm like,
just like pushing the hype train, and she's in it for like,
yeah. I'm like, where is she?
Yeah. I think that it'll be interesting to see how Denis takes the Fremen into like his own sort of interpretation, because I liked that we got to see a little bit more of Kynes, the ecologist, because in 1984 there's that scene where and this scene is also in 2021, but there's that scene where there's that brief exchange with Paul about like how he's wearing the still suit, and how I believe in, yeah, and I liked that Kynes in 2021 was able to give like more insight about the world, which is what Kynes does in the book. So yeah, I think that overall it'll be interesting. And I guess like Kynes won't be in the next one, but
for obvious reasons.
Yeah, for obvious reasons. But Stilgar and Chani will be. So yeah, there's gonna be lots to look forward to in this next one.
How'd your partner like 2021?
Oh, she loved it. She hasn't watched 1984.
Are you gonna make her?
No, I'm not gonna make her.
No, that's heresy. Well, I cannot have a Paul this old.
Well, it's not even just that. It's like she like loves the Dune books. She owns them. She inhaled Dune in like a week. And she just really like respects the book as the source material. And I don't know. I just don't think she has any desire, and I would not make her subject herself to that. Because I can get past the camp. Like I can love the camp and all that, and it's just not for her, which I understand.
Yeah, no, that's completely
Which
fair.
is funny though, because she does like David Lynch. Like she loves Twin Peaks. So
I've never seen Twin Peaks.
Very good, very, very good. Very I think you would enjoy it. But as for it being a TV show, it's like I know I have a tough time getting into TV shows. I'd much rather watch a movie, but Twin Peaks, especially with Twin Peaks The Return, being available, I believe, on Crave, and then the original series being on Crave, it's a pretty good, and you can watch the movie as well. There's Fire Walk with Me. So anyways, that's a complete tangent, but Twin Peaks, very good.
So like obvious question, which one did you end up liking more? 84 or 21?
2021. I liked there were just more things that I liked in 2021 than 1984. It was the right mix of respecting the plot and also having some creative freedom. David Lynch had lots of creative freedom, but not enough respect of the plot, which is fine. I don't think he has the same relationship to the source material as Villeneuve does. I don't think I'll watch 84 again. I'm probably going to watch 2021 again, like no questions asked. So yeah. What about you?
Oh, I like 2021 far more. Well, like I said, there's elements from the 80s film that you really only see in older films now, like the body horror, the cheesy camp, and you don't see that too often anymore. And that I liked a lot, but outside of that, there wasn't a lot here for me. It was a lot more dense in terms of the words that they were throwing out, the plot or the background understanding. You really needed to experience the story fully and understand everything that was going on. Like I said before, I needed to watch a YouTube video just to understand like
the lore,
who everyone was, like who the navigators were. Because when I first watched it, there was just like this weird alien thing in a fishbowl talking to the emperor, giving him commands. And I'm like, who the hell are you?
Yeah, well, what do you have to say about this? Like, why? What are you?
So from an accessibility standpoint, 2021 is way more accessible. The plot's more cohesive. Characters are far more developed. The action is beautiful. the cinematography and the special effects are, well, they won Oscars, so you know it's good. The soundtrack was epic. Yeah, no, I like Denis is on such a winning streak that he could basically take any IP right now, and I would probably have complete faith that he would at least make a serviceable product. So I don't really have any fears about part 2. Like, once again, I don't know the source material well, but I'm sure whatever he does with it and however he chooses to adapt it, I'm sure it's going to make, at the very least, a very entertaining movie.
Yeah, and I think it'll be satisfying. I think he respects the material enough to give it a very satisfying ending that is in at least the same vein as the book. With all that being said, what do you rate Dune 1984?
Okay, well, first, I realize I may, like, I'm rating these on Letterboxd as I go. So I don't know if you follow me, because then...
Well, what is...
I don't know if you look...
What's your Letterboxd name, just so everybody can go follow you?
Oh, God, what is my Letterboxd name? Isn't it... yeah, it's Virtual Library. So, like, spoiler alert, you probably already seen what my score was, potentially. I gave the original 84 a 3 out of 5. And I gave 2021 a 4 out of 5. And 4 out of 5 might be a little bit low, but it's that same trap that basically any movie in a series has, is like, this is clearly part 1 and you're not getting the full story. So once we get part 2 and I kind of see where things go, maybe like I'll adjust it and it'll be higher. But as of now, it's clearly an incomplete story, and I kind of maybe docked it a half of a star for that fact.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I also rated Dune 2021 4 stars for almost pretty much the same reason. I think that depending on how the ending is, I might adjust it. I'm foreseeing like the second one being a 5-star for me. Like, that's just how it is with Denis' stuff. Like, it's hard for me to find any flaws with his movies. And if he can wrap up this crazy big book, this dense world, if he can wrap it up in this final movie and put a nice bow on it, I think that I'm gonna love it. So 4 out of 5 for me on Letterboxd. And then Dune 1984, I gave it 2.5 stars.
Okay. Yeah. That's fair.
I think it would have been 3 if the ending was just if he had stuck a little bit more to the book's ending. But that's just a nitpicking thing. You know, not everybody has read the book, so I'm in a different position than the average moviegoer. So it's why I'm a little more harsh on it. But yeah, that's...
I gave the sister half a star.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. and you know what? I will say, if I had to like pick one thing that I loved about the movie, like, the soundtrack is so good. Like,
it was good.
It's like transcendently good. Whereas like Hans Zimmer, like, you can't expect to be better than him. And I love the soundtrack of 2021. There's just something charming about Toto's soundtrack for 1980.
Well, it's Hans Zimmerman's
Hans Zimmerman, right?
Epic style compared to Toto's like synthesizers and guitar riffs.
And I can't really. Maybe there's some interviews with Toto, but I have a bit more of a soft spot for the 2021 soundtrack because I listened to the Song Exploder podcast where Zimmerman talks about his reasoning behind one of the songs, like his process, and like why he chose to use voices instead of synthesizers, and why like there were some electronic sounds, but a lot of the times voices were more prevalent. There was a lot more thought put behind it, which I can appreciate. So yeah, that kind of sums up like all the things I have to say about Dune 2021.
I guess my only criticism, not a criticism, maybe if I had a wish list for Dune Part 2 in terms of the orchestral score, is I think maybe instead of Hans Zimmerman, we could get Kanye to do it.
Oh yeah. Well, what do you think Kanye would bring?
Well, I think we could go back to like the 808s and Heartbreaks album and just go like heavy synth.
Okay, interesting.
But I imagine that's a pretty strong opinion. Most people would disagree.
I think Pharrell should be in charge of the soundtrack. You know, I just feel like his music fits the vibe.
Hey, you know what? If we get any of those two people to do it, I'm sold. Masterpiece, 10 out of 10.
Well, I won't even watch the movie. I'll just listen to the soundtrack and get the movie.
Well, that's all you need. Yeah. Well, it's like when Tyler the Creator did the soundtrack for the new animated Grinch movie with Benedict Cumberbatch. Just like it just elevates the movie to a whole different stratosphere.
I did not know that.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
Wow.
He did the Grinch theme song too.
Oh man. Okay.
But with all that being said, I guess next podcast is going to be the Candyman. The remake came out in 2021, and the Empty Man. And the Empty Man was really an arbitrary pick, I guess, in terms of the reasoning for picking that movie. The Candyman's a folklore horror story. The Empty Man's also supposed to be a folklore horror story, and I've, at least from kind of my movie authority, Chris Stuckman, who I like quite a bit, he had nothing but good things to say about The Empty Man. So I really don't know anything about it going into it blindly, but if you guys have time before the next podcast to watch it,
go watch them.
Check them out.
Yeah. I hope everybody enjoyed the double feature episode. I think I had a lot of fun talking about this with you. So I think we should, I will probably put another one of these in the future.
Oh, it's always fun to compare remake movies from the original and how just the movie changes, how directorial styles change, how what the audience expects changes.
Because movies are like a time capsule, really, if you look at them in a vacuum. So yeah, it's good. All right, well, I guess let's get on to thanking our patrons. Thank you, Pixel Witch, for being our patron now for 2 months. And we have another new patron. Thank you, Mom, for signing up.
Whoa, shout out, Mom.
Yeah, she joined up. So we now have 2 patrons. It's great. Speaking of patrons and Patreon, go check it out at btfpod.com/patreon.com, or I don't remember the name is BTF Pod or Midnight Radio. If you Google that, there's 2 tiers. Check them out. If you think you would like to sign up and support the channel, that's great. But you just listening, that's just as good of a support as Patreon. So thank you for listening. If you enjoyed what you listened to, make sure to leave a rating and a review just down below. If you want to keep up to date on all the things that are happening with the podcast, we have an Instagram account called @BTFPod. No, Beyond the Frame Cast. Sorry, Beyond the Frame Cast. God, I get running social media. It just like gets to your head. So go check all of those out. Give us a follow. I post teasers for the episodes on the Instagram, and this will be available on Patreon this Wednesday. And for everybody else, next Wednesday. So thanks again for listening, and go watch Dune 2021. And if you are really inclined, you want to see some weird stuff, if you like David Lynch, go watch 1984.
I don't have anything to add. That was beautiful. What a good recap of everything.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, really been practicing.
Yeah. Does Mom have a question for us?
No, there's no questions.
Oh, well, okay. Well, Mom needs to get on that. I guess if we want to do a question, I have one.
Okay, yeah, sure.
What are your thoughts on the popularity of using TV as a medium to build cinematic universes, and do you think it's overwhelming?
I think it's overwhelming just because I think TV shows are very overwhelming, and that is potentially very specific to me. I just can't get into a TV series in the same way that I get into like a movie. So like right now, all of the new Star Wars stuff that got released or teased and then released with Obi-Wan being out, I haven't watched it yet. But I just worry that there's too much and it's so complex. And for me, I want more, but I don't want it as a TV show. What about you? What do you
I think I'm on the same boat as you.
Yeah.
And it's actually Star Wars that kind of prompted this question, because I asked my partner, I'm like, are you getting hyped for Obi-Wan? Like, I gotta admit, I'm super hyped. Like, I went to the grocery store and I was like, okay, we're gonna wander every aisle, and we're picking out every single snack that has a Star Wars character on it, and we're having like a smorgasbord of Star Wars snacks for this Obi-Wan show. She couldn't care less, but she, went to the grocery store and played along. But I was like, okay, why aren't you excited for the show? Like, it's Obi-Wan. It's literally the best Star Wars character, in my opinion. And she's just like, there's just way too much Star Wars going on now, and they're doing the exact same thing as Marvel. Because with it started with The Mandalorian, great show. Then Boba Fett, and like questionable why we needed it. I watched Boba Fett though; it was also pretty good. Obi-Wan, I'm never gonna complain about that. I wish it was a movie, but I don't care that much. I'm just excited to see Obi-Wan again. But then now there's the Alderaan show. There's Ahsoka. There's
another Mandalorian season 4.
But that's a continuation. I'm fine with continuations. There's a new animated anthology, Jedi Tales. Another season of Star Wars Visions, which is another animated show.
I think Rebels is still, or not, maybe it's not Rebels. Resistance is still going on, the TV show.
That might be going on. A show just got announced with Jude Law, which is like Star Wars Skeleton Crew. Don't have any idea what that's about. But it's just like, it's so much stuff. And it's like, I get that you have all these stories, but you're like flooding me with your IP, and it's like,
it's a glut.
We've talked about it before. I don't care about most Marvel things now because it's just too much. Like, I would be happier if Obi-Wan came out and then like 8 months goes by and nothing happens. Then we get like season 3 of The Mandalorian, and then another year goes by and we get some other like piece of Star Wars content. Like, give me something to look forward to. Yes. And like, even with like the new Batman movie, they're making a Gotham PD TV show, which is focused on Arkham Asylum. And I think they're also planning on doing another show in the
about
Batman
universe. Penguin, right? Like, isn't he getting his own spin-off?
Yeah, I think the Penguin's getting his own thing. Yeah. And it's just like, I don't know. It's so much content for the same thing all at once.
Everybody's chasing the cinematic universe thing. Like, this is a problem that I have with the new Star Trek stuff. I don't know how familiar you are with Star Trek, but I love TNG. Like the Next Generation. I don't. The original series is fine, but with like Star Trek Picard season 2 that just came out, like I watched a little bit of it. I watched most of season 1, watched a little bit of season 2. Like, my issue is that these shows, and Disney does it a little bit better, but some of these shows, they will like just stretch on and on and on for 10, 12, 15 episodes, and like every episode you don't get like a satisfying ending. So these stories go on and you just get sick of them. And I got so sick of, the end. I skipped ahead and watched the end of Picard, and it was not worthwhile because I was told that it wasn't worthwhile. And I was like, okay, well, I need to see how stupid it is. And it was not great. So that's my issue with TV shows. If it was just a movie, my 2.5 hours is gone. Whatever. I'm not going to hate it so much. If David Lynch's Dune was a 10-part miniseries and it was, 20 hours of content, I would be more pissed about the ending, but I'm not so pissed about it because it's a movie.
But, I guess we'll see where, the business kind of goes. I do hope we I hope less emphasis goes on cinematic world building. I feel like that's just a cash grab for the most part for studios.
Yeah, there was a time and place for it, and that time is over. I think. Down with the MCU.
Those are my thoughts. Yeah. Maybe next week, Mom, if you're listening, hit us with a question.
Yeah, I post the thread on Patreon, and you can just go and leave a question. Also, Pixel Witch, get in on it. Even ask us a random question. Ask us what video games we've been playing. I don't know. There's lots to talk about. We're two very interesting people.
Yeah, well, you're a little bit more interested. But I'll take the compliment.
Yeah, of course.
Like the people can learn a little bit about me besides the fact that I'm illiterate.
And it can be there is more to Ryley than his lack of reading.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
But those are for future podcasts.
Yeah, exactly. That's why they keep listening. So, anyways, everybody, have a good week. Thank you again for watching, and we'll see you all in the next one.